Welcome back, viewers. You're watching WION World is One. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Shivan Janno.
And I'm Kripa. And on the show today, uncertainty prevails over the US-Iran talks as the ceasefire deadline looms. President Donald Trump says the blockade on Iranian ports will remain until Tehran agrees to a deal. And Tehran responds saying it will not negotiate under the shadow of threats.
Also on World DNA, we'll be looking further into whether these talks will take place as pursuit of diplomacy continues on both sides, throwing in threats of escalation. Trump warns bombs will fall if no deal is reached. Iranian Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf says Tehran they've been preparing to show new cards on the battlefield, that is. Let's start by looking at the headlines first. This is World DNA.
Donald Trump tells the New York Post he is open to meeting Iranian leaders if there is progress in talks. Dismissing Iran's boycott threats, makes comments as US-Iran ceasefire approaches its expiry.
Donald Trump says US will not lift the blockade of Iranian ports until Tehran agrees to a peace deal. Claims Iran is losing about $500 million per day due to the blockade, says pressure will continue until a deal is reached.
Iran's Parliament Speaker Ghalibaf warns that Tehran is ready with new cards if fighting resumes with the US and Israel after the ceasefire ends. Rejects negotiations under the shadow of threats.
Gaza's civil defense agency says an Israeli strike kills 3 people in the Palestinian territory overnight, with Israeli jets seen over the area despite an October 10th ceasefire that is still in place.
Iraq reopens Rabia border crossing with Syria after more than a decade to accelerate overland fuel oil exports and revive cross-border trade amid disruption to Gulf shipping following the Iran war.
Rights group Amnesty International says leaders of United States, Israel and Russia are seeking to impose a new predatory world order while most countries are too cowardly to stop them.
UN official warns of alarming escalation in Russia's war on Ukraine, saying rising fighting is causing increasing civilian deaths and destruction. Notes little diplomatic progress as Russian attacks intensify across Ukraine.
Japan unveils its biggest overhaul of defense export rules in decades, scrapping restrictions on overseas arms sales and opening the way for exports of warships, missiles, and other weapons.
Asian markets opened high on hopes of easing West Asia tensions, led by gains in Japan and South Korea. Overnight on Wall Street, stocks closed mixed, while US futures edged higher as investors stayed cautiously optimistic about the near-term outlook.
The United States and Iran have warned each other that they are prepared for war as the clock ticked on a ceasefire.
This while uncertainty persisted over talks in Islamabad, the White House said Vice President J.D. Vance was ready to fly back to the Pakistani capital for a second round of talks on ending the war. But Iran's cleric-run government declined to confirm that it would participate and accused the U.S. of violating the truce through the seizure of a ship in the Strait of Hormuz and its blockade of Iranian ports.
US President Donald Trump said his country will not lift its blockade until a deal has been reached with Iran. In a post on social media, Trump said he is under no pressure to make that deal, dismissing reports suggesting otherwise. However, he added that an agreement would be reached relatively quickly and that the new deal would be better than the old one.
Now, he was referring to the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, a pact which curbed Iran's uranium enrichment program in exchange for sanctions. However, the U.S., during Trump's first term in 2018, withdrew from JCPOA.
Well, Trump told Bloomberg News that it was highly unlikely that he would extend this two-week truce. The US president told the New York Post that he's willing to meet with Iranian leaders himself if a breakthrough is reached. He separately told PBS News that if the ceasefire expires, then lots of bombs will start going off.
Now, Iran, however, has cleared that it would not accept negotiations under the shadow of threats. The country's parliament speaker, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, threatened that they have been preparing to show new cards on the battlefield if war resumes.
Since the start of the war on the 28th of February, a number of new sticking points have emerged, which did not exist before, like the Strait of Hormuz, alongside old challenges, which already include Iran's nuclear program, its enriched stockpile, and the stock of enriched uranium, nearly 400 kilograms.
Iran's foreign minister on X said, and I'm quoting him here, "We do not need our rights to be acknowledged or accepted. Our rights already exist. We want our rights to be respected."
Well, Russia has called for the Iran-US ceasefire to be extended beyond its expiry on Wednesday and stressed diplomatic efforts to resolve the war should the war continue. And this is following a call between the Russian and Iranian foreign ministers. All right, for more on this, we are now being joined live by retired Major General Randy Manner from Alexandria in Virginia. Major General, pleasure speaking with you. I'm happy we're having this conversation. Would like to understand from you where the US plans to go from here, because one side says bombs will fall, the other side says new cards on the battlefield will be revealed. Both do not want to approach by submitting to any kind of pressure. The second round of talks seem as evasive at this point as the first one did. Let's start. Do you feel these round of talks will even take place?
There is a possibility they could take place, but unfortunately, there is no trust between these two governments whatsoever. And that is something where I can't sit here and blame the Iranians. The American president, my president, has been all over the map about changing deadlines, changing priorities, changing what the demands are. And quite frankly, a blockade is a sign of aggression. So it's one of those things where, while of course the Iranians have also been doing tit for tat as far as firing on some ships here and there, the United States is in the same boat. So I think what we need to do is both sides need to step back a little bit and be more calm and find some small things that both governments can agree to. When I was in the Middle East, responsible for I was the number two person responsible for U.S. forces in the Middle East. We worked very closely with all of our allies to find a common ground. And I really do not see that happening here in this situation.
Well, General, you did mention that there's no trust between the governments, between Iran and US. But even then, Trump pushes that the talks will happen. They say they do not intend to send negotiators to Islamabad. Tehran says so. And If Iran won't even board the plane, what is the diplomacy that Trump is talking about? And if one side says the ceasefire is already broken, what talks are we even talking about?
Well, I have to agree with your lack of clarity, because that's also where I see it and where many Americans see it as well. There are three components of national power. The first is diplomatic, the second is economic, and the third is military. What we are seeing is this particular administration is going right past diplomatic and going straight to military action. One single day of negotiation with the Iranians that our vice president had a while back, that does not constitute serious negotiations. So again, I say that this particular administration is following a route of chaos and, quite frankly, is unpredictable, which of course does not help the world markets and does not help reduce the risks of increasing oil prices for all of us around the world.
Major General, you've had you've had experience with the 82nd Airborne Division. That's something I really wanted to understand from you. You've served in that division. There are thousands of those troops that are deployed currently in the Middle East with the CENTCOM. What role do you feel they can play or have played so far? And how is that going to impact the ongoing battlefield?
So I sincerely hope that those airborne soldiers and the Marines the airborne soldiers particularly, could be used to reinforce existing U.S. military bases. Because quite frankly, during normal peacetime, before all these hostilities began, there were a minimum of U.S. forces in the Middle East. So I'm hoping that that handful of a few thousand soldiers are there to be able to back up existing capabilities. And the Marines, of course, we know are helping with Navy forces in the Strait, and they're also there. It's a mission of our United States Marines to be able to safeguard our embassies and our consulates. A few thousand Marines and a few thousand airborne soldiers will not be a decisive number of men and women to put on the ground anywhere to swing the momentum. We had over 250,000 soldiers, Marines, and military of all services when we were there in the 2000s. This is not that. So we just need to be very careful, and all of your audience needs to understand that this conflict, while it could get out of control, right now, I hope that cooler heads prevail on both sides to find some areas where they can come to agreement before they get to the more difficult decisions, such as, of course, the enrichment program and opening the strait.
Major General, you established the major pillars that a country needs. You said diplomacy is there, military is there, and economy is there. And I would especially like to know the relationship between military and diplomacy. You've worked in systems where military and diplomatic tracks run together. What risks actually emerge when battlefield pressure moves faster than diplomatic agreements can stabilize? And how does that coordination unfold? Because the reality for troops are way different than it is for the White House or Pentagon even.
Yes, your listeners have to understand that this particular president has diminished our Department of State by almost 50%, meaning that from the beginning of when he took over a year and a half ago until now, we have less than half the capability in our embassies around the world to be able to work as partners with our host nations. And of course, that includes India and the countries that are in the Middle East. Because of that, this president is quick to go to military options. And you are right. Military options, the president can call his military and say, I want you to attack now in these particular locations. He cannot achieve diplomatic results on a whim. And that's not how it works with negotiations. It takes building trust and building some confidence together, both sides, on small things, and then you get to the more difficult issues as you go.
Major General, I'm slightly stepping away from where things stand right now. Given your past and your experience in the army, I want to understand from you, when a country like the US is in the midst of a war which clearly was not estimated to go at the level at which it did. As of now, there is a ceasefire. But in the beginning of this month, the Secretary of Defense asks for voluntary retirement, or in a way fires the Army Chief of Staff, General Randy George. What kind of impact does it have on the US military, and what does that say about the US war effort as of now, regardless of what kind of bombs and what kind of damage Iran has sustained?
So the United States military is still the most powerful and well-trained force on the planet. However, I will tell you that the Secretary of Defense is not experienced and does not know how to lead that department. And it's shown by firing one of the most qualified leaders we have in the military, General Randy George. I know him. He is an outstanding leader. I am hypothesizing, because I do not know firsthand, that he probably disagreed with the Secretary of Defense and stood up for those men and women in the United States Army. And I'm sure the Secretary did not tolerate it, and therefore he got rid of him. This would have been behind closed doors, in the same way that this Secretary of Defense has fired over a dozen senior officers, predominantly minorities and people of color and women, but also, of course, white males who do not agree with him. This is extremely negative for morale and for confidence of the military in the civilian leadership, which we have taken an oath to follow all lawful orders from, of course, the President of the United States.
Major General, I just want to follow up with that disagreement that you mentioned between the Army Chief of Staff and the Secretary of Defense. That disagreement, was that relating to how to proceed with this war? What kind of disagreement was it? Was it regarding a step to take or a weapon to use? What kind of disagreement would it be?
So I do not know. That is an hypothesis of mine. It's a professional opinion. Understood. Because you just don't fire a highly qualified combat leader, the number one person in the Army, for no reason. There was no justifiable reason, like a breach of ethics or anything else. And in fact, the Secretary never said why the Chief of Staff of the Army was fired, as well as, of course, several other officers simultaneously. He also fired the Chief of Chaplains at the same time, our most senior chaplain, responsible for the religious support to all of our Army men and women around the world.
Major General, if we zoom out a little and look into the mediator, Pakistan is stuck in the middle. Pakistan has positioned itself as the bridge between Washington and Tehran. It has hosted earlier contacts and trying to organize the next round as well. But Iran is pulling back while the US escalates maritime pressure. Of course, it is trying to keep the channel alive. But can Pakistan bridge this gap when both sides are moving in opposite directions?
So I applaud the efforts of the Pakistani government and of many individual leaders there that are doing the very best they can to help resolve this situation. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart, as 36 years of military experience behind me. I applaud their efforts. My concern, of course, is that they will need other people. They will need India. They will need China. Quite frankly, they'll even need Russia to be able to help them to get the two countries to the negotiating table. The president says he does not feel any pressure. The reality is he feels tremendous pressure, predominantly from the United States, predominantly from his base, which he is losing at an alarming rate. I mean, his approval rating in the United States is at the lowest of any president while I've been alive. It's rather astounding how few people support his actions at this time.
We understand, Major General, that the midterm elections are just months down the line, and that is a deadline which is looming on Donald Trump at this point. But if I were to look at the Strait of Hormuz, which was an issue which never existed before February 28th, that has become one of the major sticking points now. As of now, or post the ceasefire, who controls the Strait of Hormuz?
So you need both sides in order to see. The Iranians can shut the strait at any point, and the United States can shut the strait at any point. So it takes two to be able to work together to come to an agreement about what is acceptable and how is this going to work. So I think, and you're absolutely correct, this problem is an unintended consequence of the United States' aggression in this area in support of Israel and at the request of Israel. So it's a very sad situation. This particular threat was not part of our national security strategy, which initiated in the Pentagon through the Joint Chiefs. This was something that the president agreed to in coordination as evidence is coming out at the request of the Israeli prime minister. It's extremely unfortunate, and I hope there is going to be a way to move to some resolution in the days or weeks ahead.
Major General, I'd also like to get your perspective on another frontier of this war. A 10-day ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah began on Friday, yet Israeli strikes and home demolitions inside Lebanon have continued, while Beirut says the death toll since early March has risen sharply. Israeli and Lebanese officials are also due in Washington on Thursday for a second round of talks. That's what we know so far. But as diplomats prepare to meet, strikes continue. So what exactly did the ceasefire stop? And the talks are also happening between Lebanese officials and Washington, of course, but Hezbollah is involved here too, and they strictly deny these talks. So what did the ceasefire lead to, and will the talks lead to anywhere?
And this is when Israel was prohibited from attacking. If you can go ahead, Major General.
Yes, no, I understand. And again, a very, very difficult situation, which is obviously an unintended consequence of this as well. Originally, I believe Israel's intent was to diminish the ability of Iran to conduct combat operations, offensive operations against Israel. I think that was achieved. But then what has happened is the war has expanded, obviously, into Lebanon. And now we have, at best, a partial ceasefire on all sides. And it is not absolute. And you are correct that the Israelis appear to be able to continue striking and also demolishing of homes in southern Lebanon, which is extremely unfortunate. So I do hope that there is some pressure on the Israelis to be able to get them to the negotiation table as well, because right now it's not really holding.
Major General, John Kerry, a former Secretary of State, had mentioned how Netanyahu had asked several past US presidents, and that included Obama, Bush, Biden, and perhaps even the first term of Donald Trump, to have this war with Iran. And now that war has taken place, do you find this kind of language that has come in from Donald Trump, the best friend that Israel has ever had in the White House, saying Israel is prohibited? That kind of statement going out in public, what does that say about US and Israeli relations?
I think it says more about the president's personal relationship with the prime minister of Israel. I absolutely support Israel's right to exist. And in the United States, that is a very common theme. On the same note, it is not the condition where most people support the continuous attacking of its neighbors in the way that have happened. And of course, the prime minister's successful convincing of our president to be able to attack Iran on their behalf. History will show, and I am convinced professionally and personally, this is exactly what has happened. I know Senator Kerry very well, and I do believe that those are all true statements. And even from my own knowledge at the time, there was continuous influence that was tried to be peddled into the White House to try to get the United States literally to use our weapons and our lives of our military, our capabilities to attack Iran. This particular prime minister with this president has been rather successful.
Major General, when we look into the dynamics of this war, Washington is using a naval blockade to force movement from Iran. Israel is maintaining military pressure in Lebanon, even with a ceasefire technically in place. General, where are we on the escalation ladder right now? What would be the next dangerous rung above this? And I would also like to know, because all parties are saying different things, whose reality are we in?
I don't mean to laugh, but that is actually a great question, because each person, the President of the United States, the Prime Minister of Israel, and of course Iran, they have each their own realities. The middle ground is that there is open animosity and warfare between all of these states and these peoples. And that's the dilemma, is having a significant negative impact on the people of these countries and, of course, people around the world in terms of increased oil prices and food prices. I'm sure perhaps in India as well, but here in the United States, prices are significantly higher already. So again, I think that this could get a lot worse. I am just hoping that it does not.
Major General, it was an absolute pleasure speaking with you and getting your insights and from your own connections with these leaders and former general and army chief of staff as well. We get an understanding of where things stand in the US. Integrity in your answers and an education for all our viewers as well. Would be a pleasure to speak with you soon enough.
Thank you so very much for what you do as well. Thank you.
All right, viewers, that's a wrap on the first segment of World DNA. We'll be slipping into a short break. News and updates continue on the other side. Come right back. World DNA continues.
Five states, one powerful voice. From Tamil Nadu to West Bengal. From Kerala to Assam. Every vote shapes the future. Get the election pulse only on WION. WION, India's global voice. The channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one. In-depth coverage of global issues broken down into facts, figures and simple words. Backed with analysis from field experts who truly matter. Because we believe in decoding the real picture for you. So you get a much wider and deeper understanding of stories from around the world. A 360-degree analysis. An award-winning documentary series, week after week creating the maximum impact. Watch WION Wide Angle at these times on WION. World is one. From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes. And millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Crime is your front row seat to darkness.
Vielleicht nur auf dem Vorstand.
Welcome back, viewers. Thank you for staying with us. This is World DNA with me, Kripa. I'm with Shivan. And we'll look into all the latest developments coming from West Asia and across the globe. But first, a look at the headlines.
Donald Trump tells the New York Post he is open to meeting Iranian leaders if there is progress in talks. Dismissing Iran's boycott threats, makes comments as US-Iran ceasefire approaches its expiry.
US Vice President Vance is expected to travel to Islamabad for talks on a potential Iran deal to end war, according to 3 US sources cited by Axios, as Trump warns of possible renewed strikes on Iranian infrastructure if the talks fails.
Iran's parliament speaker, Ghalibaf, warns that Tehran is ready with new cards if fighting resumes with the US and Israel after the ceasefire ends. Rejects negotiations under the shadow of threats.
Gaza's Civil Defense Agency says an Israeli strike kills 3 people in Palestinian territory overnight, with Israeli jets seen over the area despite an October 10 ceasefire.
Iraq reopens Rabia border crossing with Syria after more than a decade to accelerate overland fuel oil exports and revive cross-border trade amid disruption to Gulf shipping following the Iran war.
Japan unveils its biggest overhaul of defense export rules in decades, scrapping restrictions on overseas arms sales and opening the way for exports of warships, missiles and other weapons.
.2 magnitude earthquake strikes Manipur's Kamjong district, causing residents to rush out of their homes in panic. No major damage immediately reported.
Oil prices slipped as markets bet on US-Iran peace talks this week that could ease West Asia supply risks. Brent and US crude both fell after sharp gains in the price session, though concerns remain over Strait of Hormuz disruptions and ongoing geopolitical tensions.
The US will host the next round of talks between Israel and Lebanon as the two sides adhere to a US-brokered ceasefire.
The talks, which will be at the level of ambassadors, will take place at the State Department in Washington. The ambassadors of both Israel and Lebanon last met on April 14 at the State Department, and 3 days later, Trump announced a 10-day truce, pausing the war between Israel and Hezbollah. However, sporadic violence has continued despite the truce.
Lebanese President Joseph Aoun has said the planned talks will aim to end hostilities with Israel and end the Israeli occupation of regions in southern Lebanon. However, Hezbollah has criticized these talks and urged the Lebanese government to withdraw from these talks. Earlier, Iran had put a ceasefire in Lebanon among its conditions for a truce with the US.
Well, according to the Lebanese government, at least 2,387 people have been killed in Israeli attacks on Lebanon since the war with Hezbollah erupted 6 weeks ago. Over 7,000 people have been wounded, while millions have been displaced. Since the beginning of the 10-day truce, authorities and rescuers have been recovering bodies under the rubble of buildings in areas that were subjected to heavy Israeli strikes. Now, in an annual display of allied military might, US and Philippines are conducting its largest ever joint combat drills near Taiwan.
And this has thousands of troops gather for annual joint military drills called Balikatan. China has issued a stern warning saying Washington and Manila are playing with fire. The joint military drills will include mock battle scenarios and live fire maneuvers in locations including provinces of Philippines facing the disputed South China Sea and the Taiwan Strait. China has objected to the US-Philippine drills, saying that they are aimed at containing its global rise.
We wish to remind the countries concerned that blindly binding themselves together in the name of security will only be akin to playing with fire, ultimately backfiring upon themselves.
Now, the live fire drills will take place in Zambales province in the South China Sea, about 230 kilometers from the contested Scarborough Shoal, a strategic atoll controlled by China. The drills will also include the participation of Japan along with several other nations. It will last nearly 3 weeks.
For their welcome remarks and recommendations to open the
Marine Expeditionary Force. What is unique and new?
And this while China is fuming following the commencement of drills. Manila says its purpose is to reaffirm the strength of the alliance and their responsibility to secure the region.
We remain guided by a shared commitment to uphold international law, to respect sovereignty, and to contribute to a free and open Indo-Pacific where nations can thrive without coercion.
Well, the Philippines and US are holding the drills as tensions simmer over Taiwan in the region. Taiwan's government rejects China's sovereignty claims, saying only the island's people can decide their future.
Meanwhile, territorial confrontations have spiked between Chinese and Filipino forces as well in recent years. In the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei and Taiwan all assert territorial claims in the South China Sea, a key global trade route.
Hey, give out! Give out! Give out!
And Japanese artist Tomokazu Matsuyama's work, Morning Again, is displayed at the Times Square.
This is as part of one of the world's largest digital public art programs. The art visualizes the diverse energies of New York City, transforming the city's pulse into light, motion and color. Take a look. Moscow has confirmed that the India-Russia Reciprocal Exchange of Logistical Support or RELOS agreement has entered into force.
Discussions on the Relos deal began back in 2018 and it was signed in February last year. The agreement was ratified by the Russian parliament, or Duma, just last December. It was then ratified by Russian President Vladimir Putin just before his trip to India, and Russia's official legal information portal has now confirmed that the deal is in effect and it entered into force on the 12th of January.
Well, the agreement is about military logistics and it is a technical deal. It lays out the procedure for troops, warships and military aircraft from India and Russia entering the other's territory. Under the agreement, up to 3,000 Indian troops can simultaneously be in Russia and vice versa. The deal also says 5 warships and 10 aircraft from both nations can be present in the other at any given point of time.
While the foreign troops or warships and aircraft are in either country, the agreement lays out the obligations of the hosting nation and simplifies the process of how airspace and ports may be used.
Well, Indian and Russian troops or military vessels may be in the other nation for a number of reasons. The Relos deal lists out the procedure to be used in the case of joint military drills and training exercises, or when the militaries are providing humanitarian assistance or relief during disasters, either natural or man-made. The Relos agreement will be in force for 5 years, and if both nations agree, it can be extended for another 5.
Russia is not the only country that India has a logistics agreement with. In 2016, India had signed the Logistics Exchange Memorandum of Agreement, or LEMOA, pact with the US. When that agreement came into force, the Indian government had also clarified that it did not allow for the establishment of any bases of the US or basing arrangements in India. All right, next up, let's take a look at what's making headlines across India. We start with protests that continue in Manipur's Kaisham Thong over the Throng Lobby incident, where 2 children were killed and their mother was seriously injured after suspected militants hurled a bomb at a residence in the area on the 7th of April. The attack, which took place in Moirang, has sparked outrage among residents, with demonstrators demanding justice, enhanced security and swift action against those responsible.
Now, after a judge of the Delhi High Court declined to recuse herself from hearing the liquor policy case, rejecting requests by AAP National Convener Arvind Kejriwal and other leaders, Aam Aadmi Party questioned the court's intent, saying that if the judiciary's image was truly a concern, Chief Minister Rekha Gupta should have faced contempt proceedings over her said judge remark in the Rouse Avenue court case involving Kejriwal.
A liquor ban in West Bengal has been extended to 96 hours ahead of Phase 1 polling, with restrictions already in force in constituencies set to vote on the 23rd of April. The move comes after the Election Commission cited an unusual spurt in liquor sales, prompting stricter enforcement to ensure a smooth and orderly election process.
Well, it usually takes a period of 3 to 5 years for students to finish their academic degrees.
Well, but the present scenario seems to be a bit different now. Institutions across US are rattled as many students are opting for hyper-accelerated degrees, becoming graduates at a breakneck speed. Reports reveal supporters of the approach tout it as an affordable, convenient way for people to earn credentials that they need for their careers. To keep up with the growing trend among students, many US schools have been experimenting with ways to speed up traditional college programs to reduce the burgeoning cost and help students move into the workforce faster.
Now, a US-based university argues that its online program, which has 3,000 students enrolled, is designed to help older non-traditional students rapidly obtain an affordable degree that they may need for a raise, promotion or new job. However, academic officials have raised concerns. They say the approach will devalue in-person education over time.
Well, the growing interest in fast degrees has spawned a mini industry of coaches offering advice online. They are coaching students on how to find a school, figure out what classes to take and speed through the programs. But these hyper-accelerated degrees have a flip side as well. From cheating concerns, value of degrees, to many academic officials even questioning if speed and learning can go together. The debate over these kinds of degrees, that debate is only getting louder. And the war in West Asia is forcing everyone to play a game no one can just walk away from.
And the longer it goes on, the worse things will become for consumers and companies, and central banks are facing their worst challenges. We decode that and more in this next report. Take a look.
Wars have become the central subject in the world, and the 2020s have been unforgiving. War is not a game, and how they impact economic realities is tough to map out and predict the outcomes. And it is still almost unimaginable that economists now have to become experts on war, or at least on the economic impact of conflict. But that is the reality of today's new geopolitical world. The biggest lesson is that predicting how military conflicts develop is close to impossible. For most economists, the new base case scenario is that negotiations between Iran and the United States will drag on. That would prompt renewed tensions and even limited, calibrated military actions. Analysts say it will take another 2 to 4 weeks before a deal is reached. Uncertainty begins to retreat and the Strait of Hormuz reopens. But it will take a while before traffic returns to pre-war levels. Insurers and ship owners will continue to be cautious. Under this scenario, predictions are for oil prices to gradually retreat to below $90 per barrel by the end of the year. It is obvious that with every passing day of a de facto blockade of the Hormuz, the risk of knock-on effects for the global economy grows. Consumers around the world are already feeling the sting of higher energy prices. Companies will be next, facing either new supply chain constraints or energy costs too high to make production viable, or both at once. It's the 2022 playbook. But one big difference between then and now is that 4 years ago, the global economy was emerging from lockdown with healthy balance sheets and an almost unstoppable consumer appetite to go out and spend. The perfect breeding ground for fast-spreading inflation. This time, the inflationary impact of an energy price crisis is likely to be more muted, as consumers will be far more reluctant to open their wallets. The 6 weeks of war has created a new stagflationary drag on the global economy. This wave will vary somewhat across regions and intensify the longer the conflict lasts, but it poses one of the worst challenges central banks can face. Business Bureau, WION World is One.
Now, Apple has failed to submit financial data sought by Competition Commission of India, or the CCI.
After an investigation found the iPhone maker abused its dominant position in India's app market, this is what happened. The regulator has now fast-tracked a final hearing on potential penalties next month.
Well, the Competition Commission of India said Apple has not submitted financial details or responded to the investigation since October 2024. According to the CCI, Apple has been given multiple opportunities to respond. The CCI has now granted Apple 2 more weeks to file its response, but has also fixed a final hearing date for May 21.
Well, the case is part of a growing list of global antitrust probes against Apple. However, Apple has cited a separate case pending before the Delhi High Court, where it is challenging India's antitrust penalty framework. The CCI typically requires financial information to calculate penalties after companies are found to be in breach of competition law. Apple has denied any wrongdoing and said that it fears a potential fine of up to $38 billion.
Well, according to Counterpoint Research, India has emerged as a key market for the company, with iPhone market share rising to 9%. That's up from just 4% 2 years ago.
Well, the investigation focuses on Apple's App Store rules, which developers say limits payment options and competition. The May 21st hearing could determine whether Apple faces heavy financial penalties, and the case is seen as a major test of India's approach to regulating big tech. And in sports, former Afghanistan pacer Shapur Zadran, who is suffering from HLH, a rare and life-threatening disease, is currently fighting for his life at a hospital in New Delhi.
The 38-year-old left-arm pacer is in the intensive care unit. HLH is a condition in which the immune system becomes severely overactive and damages the body. It mostly affects children, but can also occur in adults, especially those with infections or a history of cancer. Zadran, who played over 80 matches for Afghanistan between 2009 and 2020, is suffering from an advanced form of the disease. He first felt unwell in October, after which he was advised to travel to India for treatment. He arrived in New Delhi in January after Rashid Khan and midwife Ashraf helped fast-track his visa process.
Shapur, who continues to battle for his life, has been visited by former teammates. Rashid Khan met him during the T20 World Cup. Asghar Afghan, his former captain, accompanied him to India, and Allah Ghazanfar, who plays for the Mumbai Indians, also visited him. Meanwhile, Ashraf visited the hospital on Sunday.
All the while enjoying their comeback after 4 years, the K-pop band BTS has announced another cultural experience for their fans.
Well, global pop sensations BTS have announced ambitious plans to transform Las Vegas and Busan into immersive urban experiences to celebrate their 5th studio album, Arirang. The city, Las Vegas, will run from 20th of May to 31st of May, featuring the strip and digital marquees illuminated in the album's signature red, alongside themed hotel experiences and exclusive after parties. And this will be followed by the city Busan in South Korea from the 5th of June to the 21st of June, with full programs to be announced on Weverse. The festivals follow a historic chart performance for the group. Their lead single, Swim, recently debuted at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, while Arirang topped the Billboard 200 immediately upon release.
Now, alongside the music, the band have launched Keep Swimming with BTS, a short documentary series featuring prominent cultural figures like cinema auteur Park Chan-wook. The documentary will tell the tales of the band's everyday perseverance and the unseen efforts which ultimately lead to global success.
All right, viewers, that's a wrap on this edition of World DNA. To catch more chunks of the show, please log on to our YouTube channel and our website. That's a wrap for us. Short break, come right back.
Get the latest updates.
Destroy their
Breaking
missiles
news.
and raise their...
Credible, clear, continuous. Experts across aisles. Diverse voices, one platform. WION World is one.
In West Asia, every move shifts the world's balance. Wars, ceasefires, alliances, power never stands still. from Tehran to Tel Aviv, from Damascus to Doha. The West Asia Post cuts through the chaos to reveal the region that shapes the world. Because what happens in West Asia never stays in West Asia. This is the West Asia Post, the region's story, the world's impact.
In this rapidly changing world, is your health keeping pace? Best practices and breakthroughs busting the hype with real insights. The timeless power of yoga and ancient healing. Good food, good mood. Small steps, big impact. Your health matters. Only on WION World is One. Because nothing matters more.
Campaigns, elections, alliances, controversies, and power play. Stories that analyze global and domestic politics. A dedicated show with varied perspectives, expert take, citizens' voices, detailed ground reports, and in-depth coverage from political corridors of the world. This is Race to Power, only on WION.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One.
5 states, 1 powerful voice.
From Tamil Nadu to West Bengal.
Kerala to Assam. Every vote shapes the future. Get the election pulse only on WION. In-depth coverage of global issues broken down into facts, figures, and simple words. Backed with analysis from field experts who truly matter, because we believe in decoding the real picture for you. So you get a much wider and deeper understanding of stories from around the world, a 360-degree analysis. An award-winning documentary series, week after week creating the maximum impact. Watch WION Wide Angle at these times on WION, World is One. Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes. And millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Crime is your front row seat to darkness.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Vielleicht nur